Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We are coming to you from the beautiful and wonderful and historical neighborhood of Reedville in the shadow of the great Blue Hills. We are so honored and so wicked happy that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing thoughtful and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to write books for kids of all ages. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends, your kids' teachers, their librarians, their principals, the youth minister about the show, and let them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Amazon Music, CastBox, Player FM, Boomplay, Ghana, wherever you find your favorite shows. Today we have two wonderful guests for you. Tony Keith will be here to celebrate how the Boogey Man became a poet. And later in the show we meet Kathleen Davis, who's returning to the show to celebrate Dean's magical mix-up, the principal's pen.
You've heard the whispers. You've seen it on TV. You may have even seen the movie. Now it's time to bring Dungeons and Dragons directly to you with D&D for Hire!
More than just a game, D&D lets you step into the role of a hero you create and guide them on fantastical adventures with your friends. Perfect for beginners and experts alike, D&D for Hire is sure to delight and entertain your kids for weeks on end.
Such a fun game. There are endless possibilities. There's so many things that you can do. It's so much fun.
Our son Eli loves D&D. It's like his favorite thing to do all week.
I was like 15 when I joined. I'm 21 now. There are people who are in our party, really learn to come out of their shells.
Whether you're near or far, whether you're looking for a birthday party or a campaign to keep you adventuring for years to come, D&D for Hire has you covered. Learn more at dndforhire.com. That's dndforhire.com. D&D for Hire, bringing the adventure to you. D&D for Hire runs games digitally over Zoom or in person in select areas.
This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by I Am Musical, Adventures of Waffles, written by Barbara Brown. Waffles is a feisty and funny dog who cannot play an instrument, sing, or compose music, but somehow is convinced that she is musical. In this book, Crouton the Corgi spends the day trying to figure out how his best friend Waffles could possibly be musical when all she does is make a musical mess everywhere she goes. This story is an opportunity for children to see themselves as valid and important contributors to our musical culture, regardless of their musical abilities, while also being the first of its kind to remind children and their parents that music belongs to all of us. Get your copy today. I Am Musical, Adventures of Waffles, written by Barbara Brown. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by A is for Always, an adoption alphabet, written by Linda Cutting. Linda tells us that this book is inspired by her daughter, a Chinese-American girl adopted into an all-white family when she was only 6. She stomped down the hall carrying 2 books, demanding to know why her adoption book was different from her white brother's. Linda says her daughter asked her to write a book for adoptees from everywhere so no one would feel left out. A book that addressed the challenges as well as the joys of adoption. You and your kids are going to love this beautiful book. It's a beautiful message, and the illustrations are absolutely beautiful. Every page shows a different adopted family of cuddly animals welcoming and cherishing a new child. A is for Always. It hit #1 on Amazon for new releases. It should be in your family library. Get your copy today. A is for Always, an adoption alphabet by Linda Cutting. Join us right now from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Our guest is here today to celebrate his YA memoir in verse. It's called How the Boogey Man Became a Poet. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Tony Keefe. Hey, Tony, how are you?
Hey, thank you. I am joyful this morning is the word that I'm using. I'm joyful.
Well, I'm delighted to be. I get the privilege. You folks are listening to this. I get to look into Dr. Tony's space, and it is a vibrant office with all sorts of art and books, and it just looks so alive. It looks like if I was there, it would take me like an hour and a half just to look at everything that I'm seeing.
Thank you. And what's interesting is, I can't rotate my camera now, but it's a 360 experience. And so what folks can't see is, so this office is located in the basement of our home, and so there's no windows down here. I have a desk, a wooden desk that was gifted to me by dear friends, 100 years old, that I painted bright yellow. And so it brings sunshine into the space. But yeah, there's a lot going on in here.
It's wonderful. And there's a lot going on.
It's like a museum.
That's the first impression I get when we came on. Well, let's talk about how the Boogey Man became a poet. This is a memoir. This is your story.
This is my debut young adult memoir written in verse. Yeah, it's about kind of three very specific things. One is how I came out of the closet as gay, how I became a first-generation college student, and how I discovered my poetic voice. It starts in spring 1999 and ends in fall 2000. So it's a very short time period of my life, but it's 17-year-old Tony, in senior year, trying to figure out what am I going to do after I graduate? How am I going to figure out my life?
That's challenging for most kids who are kind of like, I know who I am and I know what I want to be. My parents have been talking to me about going to college, and I don't have to worry about taking out loans, but life is still hard. You got all that other stuff going on. How'd you get through it?
That's a great point. There was no rule book. There was no guidebook. My family, that's just the situations, the circumstances. They just didn't have access to post-secondary education. And so for me, I just happened to be surrounded by a lot of inspiring people, friends, in high school, a couple of extended family members who I discuss in the book, like Auntie P and my dear friend Ebby and Tiffy and Bubba and Cubby. These are the names of my friends and characters who were all college bound. And so it was a matter of kind of watching what they were doing, trying to figure out sort of how to navigate the same sort of space. But readers will understand in this book, it was by happenstance. A recruiter from Morgan State University came to my high school to recruit students sort of at the last minute, and I just was able to slide into that window. And then I figured out everything was flying by the seat of my pants. And so what I get excited about is because I wrote this book thinking about, if I had this book as a kid, I would have understood the college process better. And so when I wrote this, I thought, let me make sure I include some nuggets just in case young readers or even adult readers are trying to figure out their pathway but might not know how. So it's included in this book on purpose.
So it's possible for somebody to actually understand the college process.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. I even included memories of what my personal statement was like. And this is the thing about a memoir, right, is I don't remember exactly everything I did in 1999, right? And so, but being able to craft a story around those memories was sort of the best part. And so, I wrote, there's an example of a personal statement inside, maybe even a college acceptance letter. I talk about taking the SAT. So it's very much a going to college process that I've embedded in there.
Yeah. I'm excited to dive into this because it's interesting. You were sharing with us that, you came from this family that didn't have access to post-secondary education. And now you've dedicated your life to education.
Yes. I am a perpetual student. I started college in 1999. A lot of my friends laugh and say, Tony, I've never known you not to be a student. I finished my PhD in 2019, so I've literally been in school most of my life. I am an avid learner. I just firmly believe that, knowledge is power, right? The moment I got into college and began to just learn. First of all, when I went to Morgan State University first. And I want to mention that because in this book, it was really important for me to acknowledge that as a black boy in America, going to an HBCU for my very first year of college was very helpful and important for me because I learned a lot about my identity and who I was. I began to read books that were written by folks like Richard Wright and, had a lot of professors who were like really encouraging me to sort of get into this history and knowledge of who I was. That was really helpful, right? But then there's also I talk about, transferring to a predominantly white institution. I go to University of Maryland, College Park, woohoo! Shout out, go Turks. And I discovered there was also a possibility of having like a sort of a black experience at a predominantly white institution. So I talk about cultural centers and certain courses I was taking only. And the reason why I offered that to you first is there's something to be said about discovering knowledge of self and accepting my identity as a racialized being. Also sort of like accepting myself as a poet, but then also realizing that all of this was taking place within the context of education. I wrote my first poem in 3rd grade, and I shared that story in the book. And so for me, education and poetry, those things have always fit together. So yeah, master's degree in student affairs. I went and learned at Penn State University how college students develop. And so I became an administrator. So I'm running college student programs and running cultural centers on college campuses. Like I'm doing the things that I was involved in as a student, as an undergraduate student. And then when I come out of my master's program and do this wonderful trek in higher education, I then start working in the college prep world. I start running college prep programs for kids enrolled in DC public schools, first generation college students who might not know what they're doing. I was running programs to get them into college. And so it's just always sort of been my trajectory. Knowledge is power.
Yeah, well, absolutely. My beautiful wife's best friend is a former educator, and she used to say at the graduation ceremony for her 8th graders, no one can take your education away from you.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I have several friends and family members who are, Tony, why didn't you let them put PhD on your book? They should say, Tony, keep doing your PhD. And I say, y'all, the degree will be with me for the rest of my life. It does, it's not going anywhere. The education, what I learned, does not go anywhere.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. But I'm a huge advocate of education. My PhD is in education. I've specifically studied people who are like me, who are poets or spoken word artists or rappers or MCs who work in education. Because, for me, I was always someone who needed language to describe who I was beyond a job title that I was given. So when people say, Tony, who are you? What do you do? I would always say, oh, I'm director of programs at this nonprofit, or I'm, senior director at blah, blah, blah. When in reality, I'm an educational MC, which is language that came out of my doctoral dissertation research. But I know how to move crowds in education, right? Or as I tell folks, teachers who know how to move classrooms, right? But being able to inspire conditions for student learning and engagement is my full-time living. And so, yeah, I'm an NMC, it's great.
Yeah. Well, I love that. It's, we've talked a lot here on the podcast about education and about the fact that education is, as we say here in Boston, it's wicked important. And no one can take it away from you. But in a lot of places, education, our educational system, it ain't working for a lot of kids. And it sounds like what you're doing is taking what the things that are moving kids, music and poetry and spoken word, and applying that and helping them learn through those mediums.
Absolutely. This is the integration of hip hop and education. And I'm so glad you mentioned Boston because I completely was like, oh, wait a minute. Hip Hop X Lab is a wonderful hip hop education program out of Harvard University, ran by a dear friend of mine, Aisha Upchurch. And so what the world needs to understand is that hip hop culture, and this is important because hip hop is culture. When we think about the term culture, there's philosophies, values, foods, music, dress, language, right? Hip hop culture's music is rap music, but hip hop as culture is about peace, love, unity, and having fun. And what's super cool is not only at Harvard, but at the College of William and Mary and Cornell University and multiple colleges and universities around the country, University of South Carolina, have now curated hip hop archives, libraries, museums. There's hip-hop courses. I used to be a professor of hip-hop studies at University of District of Columbia here in my hometown. But hip-hop has now made its way into academic spaces. And so you all should Google things like hip-hop pedagogy. Shout out to Bettina Love and Chris Emden and Crystal Lee Inslee, so many other people who are teaching educators how you can integrate hip-hop as culture into classrooms, into community centers, into jobs. I do this work in higher education, so I'm integrating hip hop at, I won't name all the universities now, but like I'm kind of everywhere. But yeah, hip hop within education is it's a major plus, because hip hop again is for everybody. When we think about the culture, where it really came from, we think about the fact that hip hop is a culture that was created by poor black and brown kids in the South Bronx, New York, who were descendants of people who were enslaved Africans who already had rhythm, drums, and beat. Like, that is a culture created out of the need for empowerment and liberation through the song, through the dance, through dress, through language. And then, we have, ways in which hip-hop has sometimes been manipulated in media, and people say, oh, hip-hop is only misogynistic, ugly rap music. And it's like, no. I'm hip-hop, and I'm not a rapper.
Yeah. Hey, what would... And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but, because most of our parents are young, have young kids, what would a hip-hop elementary school look like?
Oh, what a wonderful question! Okay, great. So here's the thing. Here's the way that I sort of would see that happening, right, is a hip-hop elementary school would have... Here's the thing. The educators who are teaching these younger students probably already have hip-hop embedded within them, right? This is why I say I'll be 43 years old this year. Hip-hop celebrated 50 years of its global culture last year. Everybody's talking about 50 years of hip-hop, meaning I don't know a world without hip-hop in it, which means it's embedded in me. So the first thing is the educators in that school building will already understand how they've identified with hip-hop in some sort of way, whether it's through music, whether it's through dance, but they would show up like that. I know principals that say, Tony, I make sure I wear really, really cool sneakers so that my students know that I'm, but there's something about embodying hip-hop in the way they're being. The other way I see it happening is within the curriculum. Right. So in addition to maybe, students reading literary works by, William Shakespeare and others, maybe they're also reading rap lyrics by Tupac Shakur. Maybe they're also, right, like, hip hop is a part of the curriculum. They could be looking at styles of dress. I remember being a kid wearing Timberland boots and baggy jeans and, like big t-shirts, and how that was a part of cultural dress. Maybe there's even a unit about cultural dress and what that looks like in different parts of the world, right? Like, how does hip-hop look like in different parts of the world? I think there's hip-hop pedagogy. There's teaching using rhythmic words. When I teach my courses, the college level all the way to, like, sometimes middle school level, is I'm bringing hip-hop lyrics with me. I'm wearing my hoodie and my standard, but it's sort of an embodiment. And so that's what I sort of see. So it's not like a school, I think, where every day they're, they could be bobbing their head in the lunchroom of music, right? But there's a full integration. And again, it's focused on peace, love, unity, and having fun. And so the last thing that I'll say is I imagine ciphers, maybe instead of like classrooms, but a cipher in hip hop is when there's a circle and everybody's in the circle and everybody gets a chance to perform. And, this is where break dancers sort of do their best work. But I sort of imagine standardized testing looking like ciphers, right? Like maybe kids pop into the circle and they got to perform their words, right? Like I just sort of see more integration of multimodal ways of learning and listening. I can go on forever. Yeah.
Well, that sounds thrilling. I think that would be awesome. And I am delighted that I'm almost 100 years old, but I guess I'm kind of cool because I got a hoodie on too. So,
you get this. You get this. And be honest, you also, you might know a world without hip hop in it, but like you identify with hip hop in some kind of way. It's got to be. Either through, here's the thing. When we think about 5 elements, we've got DJs, MCs, break dancers, graffiti artists, and a philosophy called knowledge of self. Knowledge of self means the more I know about who I am, the more powerful I can show up in the world. So the more I know about who I am, the more powerful I can show up as a DJ, as an MC, as a graffiti artist, as a break dancer, as a teacher, as a principal, as a radio announcer, right? But somehow hip-hop has something to do with your life, and I want to know what it is.
Well, I've been making a living performing educational magic and clown shows for 35 years. So I've worked with a couple of MCs, and I can tell you about that off recording.
There we go. Integration of hip hop. There we go. This is everyone. Hip hop is everywhere.
Everywhere, absolutely. Hey, I want to get back to how the Boogey Man became a poet. We kind of glossed over the fact that this, in addition to talking about going to college without having that family history of education, you came out of the closet. And we just kind of went by that like it's no big deal. But I have a feeling in 1999 it kind of was a big deal.
Yeah, that was a big deal. And so, and this is really interesting, right? And so when we think about coming out the closet, the boogeyman exists the mirror exists in a closet, right? Like I kind of keep the boogeyman in the closet. And so the idea of coming out the closet, I just want, readers to think about sort of the story that I'm trying to tell here is, it wasn't like in this book, readers should know, there's not going to be a moment where it's like, world, I'm gay today, right? I just want the readers to know that it doesn't happen that way. Right. My coming out story is very gradual. It's very slow. And it takes place, really like my sophomore year of college, when I finally do meet up with someone in public. And I still don't even tell family members and friends about this person. And so what's interesting is those, when they read this book, they will then know like, oh, that's what this was about during that time. And so, but yeah, it was gradual. It was slow because I was scared. I mean, that was the truth. Again, I did not know any gay people. Like I didn't know anyone. And so I didn't know what rules to follow, how to figure that out. And so that was a really, really tough challenge. And again, I'm so grateful for, in the book I write about, I think I say something like, something about how safe I think the internet was. There was something about being able to have chat rooms and a world wide web, like being able to connect. And I realized so many of my friends who I know now, I met, in chat rooms as a kid, because I think we were all trying to figure out what's going on, and we were all in different parts of the world. It's like, I feel this way, but I don't know anybody like this. And so there was a sense of belonging, and even to this day, I met my husband on a dating app, it's like.
Tell me, what would having a book like How the Boogeyman Became a Poet when you were in high school, how would that have changed your life?
Oh, wow. I think about three very specific things. I would not have internalized homophobia. I would have been able to read this book and see myself and understand that what I'm experiencing is normal, it's valid, and this is coming from the voice of a black boy, too, or black man, right? This is coming from someone who looks like me, who sounds like me. And in that same vein, I would sort of unpack internalized racism, right? Because in this book, I write about how, and to be clear, no one ever threw any racial slurs at me. This is not like overt forms of racism. What I talk about is internalized racism, right? I had teachers, these were white teachers, and I'm sure they meant well or not, I'm not quite sure, but, who would tell me I spoke wrong, right? Because there was this, black version of English I say that is my first language. And so where I'm from in D.C., a lot of black folks in D.C., we say this, that, they, everybody, mother, father. It's just our natural way of speaking. And in schools, I was informed that was just wrong and incorrect. And so I began to learn that certain parts about who I was is bad or wrong. And, and also, it didn't help that I didn't know many black people who went to college, but so there was just sort of an internalizing of a negative association with who I was as a black being in America. And like I said, and also just sort of internalizing a kind of a poverty-based mindset. My mom, single mother, so amazing. I love this woman so much. She did the absolute best she could given the circumstances that we were in. My father, got addicted to crack cocaine and drugs, and he's fine now. He's a minister, and I love that man. He's wonderful, and he's like one of my dearest friends. But like being able to like wrestle with all that, and I think that reading that book, I would have felt normal or like I belonged, right? Like I would have been affirmed in my humanity, my being. It would have been like, oh, Tony, like this is what you're feeling this is normal. It's okay. There are people like this happens. Write some poems. Write some poems about it. Write some poems about it. This might help you figure your world out. It's okay to write the poetry. Writing poetry can be a very healthy form of masculinity. Performing poetry can be a very healthy form of masculinity. You do not have to be an athlete. You do not have to be straight.
Mm-hmm. How can we? You said something I think that's really powerful. The having a sense of belonging was really important to you. How can we, as parents, as caregivers, as uncles, aunts, as just adults who want the best for the kids who are coming up, what can we do to help whatever young person we meet feel as if they belong, that they're okay?
Yeah, the first thing that pops in my brain when you said that is, I don't know where the language is, just be mindful not to clip their wings. And by that, I mean, I think there's sometimes moments adults, we mean well, but, we don't always really allow young people to dream really, really, really big. And by that, I mean, I remember my nephew's really, really young, maybe like 3 years old, and he's playing with a pen top. and he was flying it around in the air like this. And he was like, Uncle Tony, what's this? And I was like, it's a pin top. And he goes, okay. He asked me again, what's this? It's a pin top. What's this? And he kept doing this annoying thing that kids do where they ask you the same question over and over. And I said, well, you tell me, what is it? You tell me what it is. And he says, it's an airplane. And he just starts buzzing the pin top through the air. And I thought to myself, like, Tony, allow the boy to have an imagination. Don't clip his wings. If he wants to dream this pin top into an airplane, you don't know, he might want to be a pilot, you know, or maybe someone who works on planes, or flight attendant, right? Or just may want to see what the clouds look like or experience the sky. Do not clip his wings. And so that's what I would offer to parents. And I think when we have less kids with their wings clipped in same spaces, they will find community and belonging together. Yeah. Right? Because they will understand what it's like to just be free. Like, oh, yeah, hey, what's up, y'all? You know?
Yeah. I think that's great advice for all of us to take. And I think sometimes we, as adults, we clip each other's wings. And
oh, yes.
Yeah,
oh, yes.
I don't think it's ever too old to imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And adults clip other adults' wings because we probably had our wings clipped as a child.
Yeah.
You know? And so that's so I think sometimes maybe that's how it shows up, for sure. And sometimes I think clipping adults' wings can look like, oh, Tony, you're going to be a full-time artist, a full-time writer, a full-time poet. You what? You know what? And it's like, don't clip my wings. Like, yes, I'm going to do this, you know?
Yeah. Oh boy, I heard that when I let the world know I was going to make a living as a performer. Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah, yeah. And what readers should know is the truth is I got laid off from my full-time job in 2019 while I was writing my dissertation. And the only way that I could survive, and my husband was laid off a month right after that, and the only way that we could survive was on the poems and my research. Thankfully, he wound up finding a full-time job later that year, and then the pandemic hit the next year. And so I've quite literally been self-employed for the last 5 years, and I've only been earning money, honest living, doing what I love to do.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great kind of exclamation point on our conversation here. You know, going out there, believing in what you're passionate about. And yes. I love that. This has been a really fun conversation. Tony, where can we go to find out more about how the Boogey Man became a poet and find out more about you?
Fantastic. Well, I'm available www.tonykeithjr.com or at Tony Keith Jr. on all social media things. How the Boogey Man Became a Poet is available anywhere that books are sold. I personally love it when folks think about their independent local bookstores first. And please check out the audio book. Oh my goodness, I'm patting myself on the back. It's available also kind of anywhere. So, and the Kindle version. We've got all the books.
Yeah. Hey, are you able, again, I don't mean to put you on the spot, are you able to give us a little taste of a spoken word or
Oh yeah, I can give you a taste of spoken word.
Spoken word, part of the whatever we can go out with.
No problem. How much time I got? About a minute?
As much as you want.
I'm gonna start from the beginning. So this is so folks can kind of hear what this verse sounds like.
All right.
I came out in the world like this, bright and burning, a brilliant little black star, weighing every bit of 7 pounds, 7 ounces, measuring 19 and a half inches long. Cesarean cut right through Mars center, smack dab in the middle of hot July on the 17th day in the year 1981. I was carefully carved fresh from her flesh at a hospital on a military base in Freehold, New Jersey, where Pop was training to be an airman basic. Same way, same place, same space where my sister Tamu was born just 17 months before. My whole body arrived on fire, flaming from the warmth of my mother's womb. Medical records say I was an infant prone to ear infections that raised my internal temperature well beyond a boiling fever. Just a little bit more. I was 3 when I bubbled over 102.7 degrees Fahrenheit. Made me tug at my lobes a little too hard for Mom's comfort. Doctors put some tubes in there to help cool down the noise. They fell out a few months later while I was dancing circles around my shadow. Wound up scarring some tissue on one of my eardrums. Now I be tripping on vertigo. It's like the world be spinning around if I climb far too high and try to look too straight up toward the sky or stare too deep down beneath the earth's belly. We'll just stop right there. But That's the rhythm of the book. That's the rhythm of the book.
Awesome. Well, it is now on my phone. I just downloaded it from Audible. So we want to encourage everybody. Check it out, How the Boogey Man Became a Poet. Our guest has been Tony Keith. Tony, thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Next time I'm in Boston, I'm checking you out.
There you go. Are you looking for a new book to add to your family library? Well, I have great news for you. Lynn Podrat, the award-winning author of Listen to Me, How My Down Syndrome Brother Saved My Life, has once again shared with us her family and a brand new book. It's called My Sister Wants an Elephant. Randy's sister wants a what? And his mom isn't flat out saying no? My Sister Wants an Elephant is a true story of two siblings who team up together to convince their mother to let them own a couple of wild animals as pets, and a mom who just might be persuaded. This book is full of humor and fun. It's a good lesson in not giving up on your dreams, no matter how truly wild they may be. Get your copy today. My Sister Wants an Elephant by Lynn Podrat. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by And the Trees Talk Back, written and illustrated by Frederick J. Burns, a gem in children's literature. And the Trees Talk Back is an enchanting and magical story about a young girl named Amanda who discovers she can talk to trees. The magical adventure and whimsical tree illustrations will delight adults and children of all ages and will inspire kindness, empathy, caring, and courage to stand against evil and give them a new appreciation of the trees that surround us. I love this book. It's a great way to inspire kids to see those who are different and who've been overlooked, and to understand that we can all be wonderful friends and that we're all part of a beautiful human family. Get your copy today. And the Trees Talk Back by Frederick J. Burns. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by The Missing Red Envelopes, a fun middle grade novel by our friend Yobi Q. As the Lunar New Year approaches, two Asian American girls from New York City eagerly anticipate the festive celebrations, from watching the vibrant parade to indulging in delicious Asian cuisine and cherishing precious family moments. The highlight of the occasion is receiving lucky red envelopes filled with surprises from their relatives. However, excitement turns to mystery when Weena realizes she's lost all of the red envelopes. What in the world will they do? Encourage readers to dive into the story, celebrate cultural diversity, and enjoy a heartwarming adventure with The Missing Red Envelopes by our friend Yobi Q. Joining us right now from the beautiful state of North Carolina, our guest is here today to celebrate her wonderful middle grade book. It's called Dean's Magical Mix-Up, The Principal's Pen. Please welcome to the show, Kathleen Davis. Hey, Kathleen, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be able to chat with you.
I'm excited, too. Anytime we're talking about something magical, as somebody who's been doing educational magic shows at schools around the world for 35 years, anytime we get to talk about something magical is always something that excites me. Tell me about Dean and this magical mix-up, please.
So I wrote this book because, like all of my books, my children really inspire my writing. And for this one, my kids are getting a little older, so this is my first non-picture book. And my son is now in third grade, so it is written for targeting third grade specifically. But he really doesn't like school. He actually maybe even hates it. And he's always saying things like, I wish I was an adult. I wish I could make up my own decisions. I wish that I was in charge. And so that really sparked this idea. And the premise is Dean goes to school and has just a really rough, awful day, and ends up stealing the principal's pen. He finds it on the floor, steals it, gets in a big fight with his mom that night, and he wakes up the next day and he is the principal of the school. And it is all about the things he has to learn the hard way, and it has lots of things you would want your kids to read and morals, about honesty and hard work. And it's a sweet little book and I love it.
Wonderful. How exciting that is to be able to turn your son's frustration into a really neat book for everybody to enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't helped. He still says things like, Mom, I just wish I was an adult. But yeah, I mean, the hope was for him to have something to relate to, and all kids, because, you know, whether your kid loves school or whether your kid hates school, I feel like most kids are like, school some days. And yeah, this one's just so sweet and lovely, and I think everyone will love it.
Well, you know, that idea that kids don't like school. I don't want to go as far as hate school, but, you know, I think that's something that a lot of parents hear from the kids. And as a teacher, somebody who worked so hard to make school exciting for their students, what do you have a different reaction than the typical parent when you're hearing your kid saying, I hate school?
I do. I really do. And it's not the best reaction because my reaction is immediately like, well, why isn't the setting better that you enjoy it? What is the issue as to why you don't like it? Are you bored? Is it not fun enough? Is there not enough creativity? And I think that's just the mother in me that comes out instead of, you know, turning my eyes on my son and having him try to change his perspective. I'm always like, well, what needs to be changed for you? Which I probably should work on that this year as a good New Year's resolution.
Well, you know, yes and no. I mean, realistically, yeah, you kind of got to get along with the teacher because that's
life.
The life. That's the way it is. But you and I were having a conversation about music before we started recording, and my daughter and how she loved a certain type of music when she was in high school. She's grown. She's a young adult right now. She still enjoys that music, but her tastes have changed, and she has it definitely. There's things that she loves, and we recognize that in terms of music that there are all sorts of music that kids love. You know, a concert that kids would line up for and wait for a year and get their parents to spend $1,200 for a ticket for. Hello, Taylor. You know, that concert, that music that just energizes so many people around the world would bore the life out of somebody else. And the music that kid would enjoy would probably horrify the Taylor Swift fans. And we recognize that and we kind of celebrate it. But when it comes to school, it's like, okay, everybody who's 8 who lives in this particular town has to go to Miss Smith's class. And if you're not loving it, it ain't Miss Smith's fault. It's your fault. And that seems a little backwards to me.
Yeah, I have a really hard time with it also. And, you know, especially I taught for 10 years. I have a master's in education. I kind of ended in administration, but I also do as well. And I also I'm kind of now switching gears to maybe I need to start homeschooling because every child is different and every child has different needs and learns differently. My kindergartner just loves school. She has no issues. Things are wonderful and cheery and she just has no problems, never complains. So kids are different. And as you said, they all have different needs. And modalities that we learn by as well. So, school can be super easy and wonderful for some and also can be a rough, hard path for others.
Yeah. And, you know, and there certainly are hard things that kids have to go through. And we've talked about not bubble wrapping kids and helping them get through and be resilient and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to school, I mean, there's so many, you know, being in school and you're not thriving, you're not being challenged by it, you're bored, maybe you're being seen as a troublemaker, maybe you're getting through and you're not getting good grades and you're thinking that you're a loser, and that kind of stuff can stay with a kid for forever.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 100%.
So let's talk a little bit more about how Dean's Magical Mix-Up might be able to help a kid change their perspective of schools. what kind of conversations might you have with your dean to kind of say, well, maybe we can spice things up and make school more fun for you?
Yeah. So the book really, as I said, I was a teacher. I taught specifically third grade. My son is in third grade. So I really did try to like purposely write this to that reading level, and interest level. I mean, all the way down to the like full color illustrations that I feel really appeal to that third grade child. But, in addition to that, in the back of it, I did questions to reflect on that go in chapter order, to really help parents and kids pull out those deeper conversations. You know, what is it that you like about school? What is it you don't like about school? If you could be anybody, you know, who would you be? If you were the principal of the school, what sort of things would you do differently and why? So really it's created and made in a way to have those conversations. You know, as a teacher, when my students were struggling, their parents would say, what do I do to help them? And this was in third grade. And I would say the number one way you can improve comprehension and fluency with your child is to read aloud to them. And so, reading and having conversations with your kid is it's so valuable. And a lot of times, you know, we might save that reading aloud time to our younger children and kind of skip over our older ones, or we do it with our older ones and it's really very robotic. Let's just get through it and be done. And so, I really wanted parents and children to read this together, to be able to have those deep conversations and have a little bit of time together to talk and maybe not just buzz through the book.
Yeah. You know, you bring up a good point. Third grade, I think is, and I'm only thinking that because I'm learning from this podcast. You know, my beautiful wife was a teacher for 34 years, but she was a special ed teacher. And so she had that ideal kind of setting, although she didn't have the freedom to be as creative as she might have wanted to be. But, you know, her goal was to kind of like figure out where is the kid at and kind of teach to that special need. I'm hearing over and over again from teachers that kids learn to read from kindergarten to second grade, and then in third grade, they start reading to learn. And that if they if they're not reading in third grade, they're in a lot of trouble because they don't have the help. And I love the fact that you're reminding us that continuing to read, especially with our third graders, is so very important because not everybody's going to get to that finish line at the same time.
100%. And not only just with your third graders. I mean, your fourth graders and your fifth graders, they want to be read to as well, just like we do. When I listen to an audiobook, I love it. It's the exact same thing as an audiobook, but it's even better because it's with mom or dad or whoever is their caregiver. And so it's also giving extra bonus points because you get that little bonding, you know, time. I was just downstairs reading with my son and daughter, Percy Jackson, which is far beyond my kindergarten daughter's reading level and probably my third grade son. But they did not want me to stop. I mean, I was almost thinking I was going to be late to this because they just want you. They love it. They love it. And it doesn't matter what age, really.
Yeah. I believe I started reading the first Harry Potter book to my son when he was either kindergarten or first grade. And as I'm reading it, I'm like, dude, I don't get any of this stuff. I don't know how you're getting it, but he didn't want me to stop. And so we went through all 800 pages.
Yeah, 100%.
So what was it like for you moving from picture books to this middle grade format? Was it something that was a real challenge for you?
So I love to write, and I have a website, and I write for our Franklin, because I'm in Tennessee. I'm in Franklin, Tennessee. I write for a Franklin magazine there. So I love to write. And with picture books, I've really been, with my two previous picture books, Brave and Feathers from Above, they're very short, rhyming. I just couldn't let it loose. So with this, it was really wonderful to be able to just write whatever I wanted to. I really enjoyed it. But I do have to say I really hated the editing process. It was awful. It was such a long, it was way more terrible than I ever imagined it was going to be. I realized I have no idea where a comma belongs, and semicolon and end dash, and it was really awful, that part. But I absolutely loved writing it, and I loved that I was able to pull in an illustrator too, because again, just like reading aloud to kids, our kids like to see pictures too. Doesn't really matter the age. So, yeah, it was an all around fun experience, except for the editing, minus the editing.
So, is this, if you get some help with the editing, are you looking to write more stories, share more stories in this genre?
I am. I'm not going to let the editing stop me. I've just continued to explain to my children how many drafts you do and how you don't give up and how, you just keep going over your work. You can always make it better. But no, I wrote this book, to be a sequel, to continue with Dean's adventures. And, so the magic is essentially in the pin, the principal's pin that he steals. And at the end of the book, he ends up being able to keep the pin and hopefully continue on more journeys.
That's wonderful. Wow. So much fun. What was your son's reaction, when he first learned that you were creating this story and going to share it with the world?
He loved it, but they're kind of like mom's old news. This is the third one. I feel like the first one, they were like, and now by this third one, all he wanted to know was what he looked like. And is the boy going to have a messy jersey on like him? Cause he would like to wear that every single day of his life. Is he wearing socks with his Crocs? And, he really just was into the illustrations and how he compared to them. But, they're kind of like, they're more amazed, like when I'm on like local news things, like those mid-morning news things. They're like, oh, mom's on TV. That's when it can really get them. But other than that, they're just like, meh, womp womp. Although he does love that almost every student in his class has bought the book. And, he feels very special about that, as he should.
That's awesome. You were mentioning to me beforehand that this is, while it's a middle grade book, you really target it for the younger part of the middle grade audience. And so how specifically would it differ than maybe a typical middle grade novel?
So I kind of could compare it to a Magic Treehouse sort of language, but as I had mentioned, my other two books are faith-based. This one is not. There is no religious connections to it. However, I really didn't like my third grade son reading a lot of the popular books that just had words that we don't use at home. We don't use the word hate. We don't use the word stupid or idiot. And I would say most of the books that are really popular with boys specifically right now in third grade are those books that kind of have that language. And I'm kind of like, well, if I'm not using it, I don't want him to use it. I don't really want him reading it. Mm-hmm. So, it's written specifically for third grade, middle of the road. But you could very easily read this to your kindergartner and they would understand all the concepts and everything and all the language. And on up, K1, 2, 3, definitely fourth grader could read it and you could enjoy it as a family in fifth grade.
Yeah. I love middle grade novels myself because they are a lot of fun. And, you were mentioning listening to, audiobooks. I just started a new audiobook right before we met here on Zoom. It's the latest Spencer for Hire novel, and being in Boston, we love Spencer for Hire, and I love those detective stories. The feature the gruff, grumpy, older guy, but there's moments in all of those books where the old guy runs into he's saving a 20-year-old and somehow they end up romantically involved, and it's like, dude, I don't need to listen to this. And I kind of skip through that part because it's just like it's the same and it's boring. It's nothing to do with the story. What is there a new project that you're working on that you can give us a little sneak preview of?
Yep. So I am starting like tomorrow, I think. I have my fourth book we're going to start illustrating it tomorrow. It is a picture book. It is another faith-based picture book. I'm so sorry about that. It's another faith-based picture book, and this one is again inspired by my children. And it's called Our Hearts. As of now, the title is going to be Our Hearts. And this one is based on, so basically I write books to remind kids they're not alone, that God is with them. And so this one is another one of that, a part of that series, which is all about how our kids experience good things and bad things and good times and hard times, but they're not alone. We feel the pains that they feel, and our hearts grow with their hearts. And all of that sadness and pain, we feel it too, but it really just makes room for all of the joys and love and laughter and good things in life. So it's all about that.
Well, those are pretty good things to write about.
Thanks. Yeah, I am really excited about it. I think it's going to be the third. So it'll be the third and final to my picture book series, as just that kicker, to remind kids that God is with them and they're not alone. And your parents too. My kids, as I said earlier, my kids really inspire me. And particularly my son, he's one of those very emotional, sensitive people in life. And he just feels everything. And so I really just want to, I feel like he's not the only one. He's not the only child like that. And I really want to remind kids that you're not alone in feeling these things. And not only are your parents there and feeling those things and there to help you, but God is too.
Yeah. I love that. And that is certainly a message that I tried to share with my kids as they were growing up. And I know lots of families out there of whatever faith tradition are trying to share that message with their kids too. Kathleen, where can people go to find out more about you and find out more about Dean's Magical Mix-Up?
So my website is the best place, and you'll get the most bang for your buck, KathleenDavisBooks.com, and you can get all 3 of my books, and I sign them and send them out, and there's no shipping costs or anything. But you can also go on Amazon.
Wonderful. We've had a great time speaking to the author of Dean's Magical Mix-Up, The Principal's Pen. It is a brand new chapter book, middle grade novel from our guest, Kathleen Davis. Hey, Kathleen, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. I really appreciate chatting with you.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. I love being the host of Reading with Your Kids. It's so much fun talking to folks like Dr. Tony and Kathleen, and I love that you're listening out there. Thank you so very much. I would love it if you could join us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids. If you're listening to this in March of 2024, you can go to our Facebook page and take part in our fundraiser for Clowns Without Borders. We are helping Clowns Without Borders bring smiles to kids all over the world. Kids who are living through a disaster, who are fleeing violence, who are internally displaced. Just kids who need a smile. And we would love for you to be part of that. It's a wonderful thing. You can also check us out on Instagram and TikTok. It's at Reading With Your Kids. And if you're on Twitter or X or whatever you call it these days, it's at Jedley Magic. We also have a great YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. And, of course, we would love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can check out our blog, download our free online magazine. Rory Grady does such a great job, along with all the authors who are contributing to the magazine. Please check it out. You can also check out our Certified Great Read Wall of Fame. And you can use the contact button that you'll find up at the top of the page to let us know what you love about the show. And you can let us know what you don't love about the show. And most of all, we would love to know who you would like to hear on a future episode of the show. And if you're an author, please do be sure to click the Authors Click Here button up at the top of the page. We want you to find out how you can be a guest. Being a guest is fun, it's easy, it doesn't cost you a thing, and it gives you the chance to tell thousands of Kidlit fans all over the world about your great kids book. You can also learn about our effective and very, very affordable promotional services. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, our guests, our sponsors, and of course my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Chris Doherty, Skylar Strauss, Nick Warner, Kyoko Ito, Kaylin Newland, Kristen Barrett, Sydney Swan, Hannah Rose. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. thank you for taking the time to listening to the show. And thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.